Welcome to the Titan Tar channel. Today we have a topic to discuss about Moscow's forces dominating strategic tributaries in Vugledar and Donbass. Don't miss the chance to join us and share your opinions with us. Become a member of our channel and evolve your rank. Russian troops have been gradually transferring control of territories northwest of Vugledar following the capture of the city. According to the latest information, approximately 15 square kilometers of this area have come under the control of the Russian Armed Forces, consolidating strategic advances. This movement has allowed the area under Russian control to be expanded along the road to Bogoyavlenka and towards Novokrenka, establishing control over the territories around the tributaries of the Kaslagach River in the north. At the same time, the Ukrainian military command is trying to establish new defense lines after the loss of Vugledar. Despite previous statements that the city was not of strategic importance, the Ukrainian Armed Forces acknowledged that its capture by the Russians has significantly reduced the length of the front line in that area. This change allows Russian troops to advance in several directions, such as towards Bogoyavlenka in the north, as well as towards other settlements, increasing pressure on Ukrainian forces. However, reorganizing defensive positions requires a significant number of troops, which the Ukrainian command is finding difficult to meet. The 123rd Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces has faced internal problems, with reports of mutiny, while the 72nd Brigade has suffered heavy casualties, becoming the target of methodical operations by Russian troops in the plains near Vugledar. This situation has hampered the Ukrainian army's ability to react, which urgently needs to replenish its forces. Meanwhile, Russian troops are not seeking a rapid and risky advance, but are pursuing a gradual strategy focused on the systematic elimination of Ukrainian forces. This methodological approach avoids large losses, allowing Russian troops to maintain constant pressure on the defenders. At the same time, the Western press is trying to interpret the events in Donbass by speculating about the Ukrainian strategy. An American publication previously reported that the Ukrainian command's plan was to open a front in the Kursk region in order to force Russia to redeploy its troops from Donbass, thus creating Ukrainian superiority in the region, which would allow for a decisive counterattack. However, such a counterattack has not yet occurred, prompting analysts to put forward new theories. According to a new article, the alleged strategy of the Ukrainian Armed Forces would be to wear down the Russian army by retreating and allowing the Russians to advance until they are exhausted. However, these same analysts expressed doubts about the effectiveness of this plan, noting that since the beginning of the year, the Ukrainian army has lost several important cities in the Donbass, such as Marinka, Avdiivka, and Vugledar. The distrust surrounding this strategy is evident. An American newspaper points out that, although for outside observers the Ukrainian retreat may seem like the beginning of the end, the Ukrainian command continues to believe that it can make Russia pay a high price for the war. At the same time, the article highlights that Russian President Vladimir Putin has put the Russian economy in a state of war, with no signs of intending to stop his military operations, and that the Russian population's support for the war effort remains solid. From another perspective, an influential American publication suggests that despite the apparent movement around Ukraine in the West, the situation is at an impasse. The recent visit of the Ukrainian president to the United States did not make much of an impact, and the growing crisis in the Middle East is diverting Washington's attention to other priorities. As a result, the assistance that Kyiv so urgently requests from NATO countries does not seem to be forthcoming, leaving Ukraine in a situation of uncertainty. Ukraine is no longer a top concern for the United States at the moment, according to a newspaper citing Ukrainian officials. Zelensky's recent visit to the U.S., where he presented his victory plan, failed to convince the Joe Biden administration. The authors of the American publication claim that the Biden administration is acting cautiously, avoiding mistakes that could harm Kamala Harris's election campaign, especially with the elections approaching. American public opinion on the conflict in Ukraine is also changing. A growing number of citizens are expressing support for negotiations and compromises, including temporary concessions on territorial issues. This sentiment is driven by a number of factors, including the continued failures of the Ukrainian armed forces on the front lines, increased mobilizations, and recurring problems with the electricity supply, which have directly affected the lives of Ukrainians. Meanwhile, A British political scientist and columnist for a UK newspaper has expressed the expectation that Ukraine could launch a new large-scale counteroffensive against Russia in 2025. He argues that Kyiv will rely on new Western equipment that will continue to be sent and new brigades that may be formed by then. He also suggests that Kyiv will seek permission from the West, especially Washington, to use long-range weapons and strikes against Russian territory, such as missiles supplied by the US and the UK. The columnist also predicts that over the next year, Ukraine will gain military strength, while Russia, on the other hand, will face difficulties such as weapon shortages, lack of personnel, and economic problems resulting from the war. He believes that this situation could prompt Vladimir Putin to seek peace on his own terms, trying to end the conflict in a way that is favorable to Moscow. However, the British analyst seems to ignore the current reality in Ukraine, which still has to hold out until next year in extremely difficult conditions. A Ukrainian politician and former advisor to Zelensky's cabinet said that in order to save the situation on the battlefield, Ukraine needs to start negotiations. He believes that in the fall, conditions for the Ukrainian Armed Forces will become even more critical, as Russia will intensify its offensive as much as it can while it has the opportunity. According to him, the months of October and November will be particularly brutal, representing an unprecedented, terrible threshing floor, and the only way to slow down the Russian advance would be through peace negotiations. The politician also revealed that Zelensky is already considering such negotiations, and that everyone around the world is coming around to this idea. He emphasizes that Kyiv has missed several opportunities on the battlefield, and if no measures are taken, in 3 or 4 months the front line may begin to crumble in several directions, leading to mass desertions and surrenders. He stressed that the Ukrainian soldier is losing understanding of the goals of the conflict, with seemingly unattainable goals being imposed, such as the recovery of the entire Ukrainian territory. In addition, the West is also reportedly pressuring Kyiv to set more realistic goals for the war. Zelensky, who mentioned a second peace summit on Ukraine scheduled for November, is now struggling to secure the participation of several countries, and the event remains unclear. Meanwhile, his visit to the U.S. with a victory plan over Russia did not seem to yield the expected results. Ukraine, therefore, finds itself at a crossroads, where strategic decisions will be key to defining the future of the conflict and the nation itself. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and share it with your friends. Your interactions mean a lot to us and help us grow. See you next time.